kill Sabine Wren, how the heck is Han Solo dead? I guess it was the header off the bridge that killed him. Although maybe you could argue that by the very nature of a lightsaber blade, it cauterizes the wound. So it's actually not that deadly? I mean, I don't know. I think it takes a little bit of the excitement out of lightsaber fights because you're like, if they poke you with that, don't worry, you'll be just fine. I would think that any torso shot would be deadly. I mean, how about this one? How's the captain not still alive, right? He should be okay. By the way, with that opening sequence, even though the crew was wearing blue and brown uniforms, you could see where it was going. I was like, they're all red shirts. In fact, I felt like you should have put some red detailing into their uniforms to kind of make it an inside joke, right? They were so stupid. The rebellion, or now the New Republic, is so dumb. After seeing how they operate in Mandalorian Season 3 and now here, they are the stupidest group of people. I mean, it's amazing. It's just, it's shocking how stupid they are. We'll talk about it a little bit more. But I think it would have been fun to have a little, I mean, although I guess you can't put red into the uniform of a New Republic officer. That's a evil color. But I don't know. I would have been tempted because they were so obviously red shirts. Also, the whole opening sequence, it was weird to me because what undercut it was that Vader did it better at the end of Rogue One. I was like, are you really doing a redo, a less adequate redo of that amazing, instantly iconic sequence to open up this show? That was a weird choice. But yes, hello and welcome to my breakdown of episodes 1 and 2 of Ahsoka. Where to start? Don't worry, I will fill you in on all the Rebels connections. But I want this, I have mixed feelings about the show, and so we had a little fun in the opening there, so let's switch to some of the positive things about the show next. I want to talk about coolest moments. So shout out to Dave Filoni for going old school Star Wars from the opening crawl in red. Thank you very much. I like that. As soon as I saw it, it brought a smile to my face. I thought it was very effective and it was very well written. Some of the newer crawls have just, been there for the sake of having a crawl. But this one really made you feel like the story had already started and you were like, oh, let's see what's happening. Oh, this is going to be great. It was really cool. And then they cut to a Star Destroyer close-up, which of course is a classic Star Wars move, only this time it bore the logo of the New Republic, acting just as dumb as an Empire ship. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And maybe Star Wars is, in fact, at the end of the day, anti-big organization and bureaucracy. But anyway, I also thought the 1970s look of the crew on the ship was kind of cool. It was very old school Star Wars, but at some points, it was a little too 70s for me. I was like, are they just wearing like flaps over their sneakers for boots? Is that what you guys got going on here? Like a cheap Halloween costume? Ahsoka versus droids, though. I love that. Is this dude also a droid, by the way? Because we can't see his face, but he seems dressed like an Inquisitor. And are there no more Inquisitors at this point, right? I mean, maybe not. But maybe that guy stole all of his stuff from the office, right? He's like, I'm keeping all this, right? And going on an excellent post-career as a hired hand. But he has an Inquisitor-style lightsaber, which I wasn't impressed with in the Obi-Wan show, but then after watching Rebels and seeing what you can do with that style lightsaber, I was excited to see it. But unfortunately, it seems they couldn't afford to go all out, at least in this sequence. I mean, I'm telling you, when someone deploys one of those things, it should be leading up to an amazing lightsaber battle. Ahsoka's first fight against the droids, I loved those droids when they revealed themselves. I was like, and they were popping up like daisies. There were so many of them. I was like, that is a great droid design. And I knew when she was backing up that she was going to drop down through that hole. So those droids need better programming on their anticipation protocols. But her next move of evening the playing field by dropping down some of the other droids through the ground with her lightsaber, I like that twirl trick. Although, when the lightsabers cut the ground at an angle, it was bothering me that the cuts were straight down. I was like, it would be at an angle because you're not throwing them straight up. It would be impossible to be able to have to be able to be exactly perpendicular. It would be more at an angle. This little stuff gets me. All right, so anyway, but that was cool, and I didn't see her doing that. I was like, that's a neat idea. But as I said in my non-spoiler review, Rosario Dawson, while she looks fantastic in these fights, she's too slow executing them. executing the fight choreography, which forces her opponent to also have to slow down, which makes the entire fight weird. But in her episode 2 droid fight, there were still some cool moments, like when she cut through the glass to go down to the level below. That was from the trailer. It was so cool. Also in the trailer, because these are such amazing moments, is when that Inquisitor type figure let his cape go in the wind. I loved it. It was so great. He's like, I don't even need this cape. I got a whole bunch of them on the ship. Don't worry about it. I mean, it was fantastic. I was like, that is cool. I appreciate all the lightsaber moves. That was so great to see. But there isn't enough force use still in these fights, either to push back an opponent or to do a super jump. You see that a little. They definitely do it a little bit, but not enough. Because if you watch Rebels, again, they have the best Jedi fights Lucasfilm has ever done. And they're using force moves constantly, just as much as they're wielding the lightsaber to move their opponents around, to get them out of the way, to take some of them out. I mean, it's really cool. It should be like one hand's doing a lightsaber, one hand's doing the force moves. And here, they're limited. And I guess maybe it's for the budget, but I wish they'd find a way. I mean, they found a way to animate a gazillion droids. Bring me some more force stuff. It was cool when the Inquisitor called back his blade and Ahsoka nonchalantly just kind of dodged it just a little bit. I was like, that was a boss move. There shall be a rematch between them, I'm sure. Speaking of fights, Sabine Wren versus Shin Hati. I'm surprised Star Wars has never gotten called out for all these Asian-style names and having very few. They have some. They've certainly gotten better, but they're really, the cultural appropriation is semi-strong with these. All right, so I had to say it. It bothers me a little bit, particularly with like David Tennant's droid's name. All right, so anyway, how on earth did Sabine feel that she could take this woman on with having very limited lightsaber skills? I was like, what? I mean, it's important to be brave, but it's also an important lesson to realize the distinction between brave and stupid. Perhaps if Ahsoka had trained her better, I think Yoda would have the guts to say that, to say there was a difference between brave and stupid. This shot was very cool. I was like, ooh, I like that. But after her darksaber training in Rebels, so if you had not seen Rebels, you would just think that Sabine was, not particularly a good fighter. But if you've seen Rebels, and you know that Sabine already had it made clear to her that her best advantage in these fights would be to use both her Jedi and Mandalorian skills, you would be as frustrated as me that she seems to have totally forgotten that very important lesson. It took 2 episodes to teach her that, and then she forgot it. Huyang, David Tennant's robot, droid, points out that Sabine will never be the best Jedi. She just doesn't have as strong a connection to the Force as, he says, any other Jedi who ever lived. But I think what he's getting at, and what's already been pointed out to her, is that she can be a great Jedi-Mandalorian hybrid, like Grogu. Although, again, why aren't we just exploring this with Grogu? But anyway, yeah, I mean, that's what she should be working towards. And she should have done, when she went and grabbed her lightsaber to take on Shin Hati, she should have grabbed some Mandalorian stuff as well. All right, other cool moment, this hologram freeze. That was so cool during the briefing. I was like, wow. It's like having really cool collector statues in the room. If only Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati were this cool in their live action appearances. I was like, I know these guys in real life, and I've never seen them look that good. I mean, that was really cool. I loved that. All right, so before we dive into the characters and their best moments, I want to talk about story parallels and expansion with Rebels, right? Because there's some really interesting stuff going on here. When Ahsoka is in that Night Sisters, aka Daughters of Dathomir, aka Witch's Temple, that's all the same thing, that's just different things to call them, it's very similar to the Jedi Temple that needed to be unlocked at the end of Rebels, which Sabine also was the one to figure out how to open, by the way. So on that note, let's talk about the Force. I find this interesting, and if you're not really into this, you're not going to love Dave Filoni's Star Wars. Now, one of the interesting things about Rebels was how it expanded the idea of the Force. For instance, there the Force allowed Ezra Bridger to be able to communicate and work with animals. That was very cool. And on Lothal, by the way, Clancy Brown, who works a lot, and I'm sure all of you know who Clancy Brown is, but what you might not know is that he voiced one of the freedom fighters on Lothal in Rebels. So it's a nice little Easter egg that he's playing that same character here, who now leads Lothal again. Ezra, born on Lothal, was close with Loth-Cats, who are so well realized here. A great blend of CGI and practical effects. I was like, that looks straight out of like Dark Crystal or Jim Henson or something. I thought that was so cool. And Loth-Cats would often come to Ezra in dreams to help him, to tell him things or help him, show him the path to take. And he eventually went on to meet Loth Wolves, which are so cool. If they bring Loth Wolves onto this show, I'm going to get so excited. But those are animals so deeply connected to the Force that they could travel through time and space and even move through objects, including a planet. Like one of the coolest shots from Rebels, season 4, is that they're riding these Loth Wolves, and the Loth Wolves dive into the grass and into the ground and travel through the middle of the planet, you know, and they all lose consciousness and don't get to see it. But it was so amazing, and to think that that's all stuff that can stem from the Force is really interesting. And of course, when Ezra was able to finally enter that Jedi temple I mentioned, it put him in a place where he too could travel through space and time. And there were doorways to different important moments. And he used that opportunity to save Ahsoka from dying in her fight against Anakin like a season or two beforehand. And there are rumors that Ahsoka might do a similar thing on this show where she goes through space and time to save Anakin. From what point to do what? We'll see. I don't know if they're going to do that. That would be quite interesting. Could they retcon Anakin through this show? I don't even know if that's a good idea. I think that would be insane, but I am also kind of into it because we need all the cool Jedi we can get. So maybe. But I mean, that's what we're talking about here. That's what Rebels has opened up. But anyway, as you can see, Filoni is making the Force more than just Jedi versus Sith. Even the Night Sisters, aka the Daughters of Dathomir, aka witches, they are Force wielders in their own right, in their own unique way. And this is further interesting by the fact that you're dealing with former Jedi here who are also no longer adhering to the idea of there's just Sith versus Jedi. Ahsoka, during Clone Wars, left the Jedi Order to go on her own path as a rogue Force user. And isn't that what Baylan and his apprentice are doing? I mean, sure, they're still on the Jedi-Sith spectrum. They're both just more towards the middle. And I think that's maybe why Baylan respects Ahsoka and says it would be a pity to have to kill her because, you know, he says there are so few Jedi left, so few. But I think also because I think there's a kinship between the two of them, and that while they're still both Jedi, not really. You know, they're both deciding what that means to them and defining it for themselves, right? I mean, Baylan's definitely gone over to the Sith side, but I think he feels, you know, again, it's a sliding scale, and you can move on that scale. He's like, Sith today, maybe Jedi tomorrow. You don't know, and we don't know. Maybe that'll happen. This is also why having Huyang as on Ahsoka's team is such a fantastic idea, as was made evident during these first 2 episodes. He is the droid who helped train all the Jedi and specifically helps them craft their lightsabers. He's like a database of Jedi, not only of Jedi individually, but mapping their different approaches and the paths that they've taken. He is a Jedi expert, having studied them for hundreds of years. What a great idea as we explore what it means to be a Jedi, you know, after the original trilogy. I mean, that's just such a neat idea. I really like that. I thought it was great that Huyang was able to identify Baylan by his lightsaber, and that he also illustrated to Sabine how Jedi and the Force work, that no new energy is created, instead it transfers and evolves. I love that. He points that out because she says that's Ezra's lightsaber. And he says, it was Ezra's lightsaber, but it's been transferred to you and you've made your own modifications to it and now it's your lightsaber. Oh, I thought that was, I mean, people are making new lightsabers, don't get me wrong, but I think that idea is really beautiful. Also in Rebels, they had a Jedi funeral, which also kind of alluded to this, which was also really fascinating. So this is a very sophisticated way of looking at the Force, although I'm not sure how mainstream it is, because the more you complicate something, the more niche it becomes. I'm looking at you, Westworld. So I question, you know, the business idea of doing this exploration, but I certainly like it. I am also enjoying the further exploration of the importance of master and Padawan, or master and apprentice, depending on, again, what side of the spectrum you're on. Beyond training the next generation. At least that's how I've always just looked at it, you know, as teacher and student. But Huyang points out that Ahsoka is vulnerable in the field because she doesn't have a Padawan to watch her back. I thought that was great. And we discover that that was briefly Sabine. Why did they do that off camera? What a stupid idea. Why not make it that Ahsoka realizes she needs a Padawan during this show when we were watching and decides to recruit Force-sensitive Sabine on the show that we're actually watching? I guess they wanted to hit the ground running and Sabine already have some Jedi training under her belt, but she already had Darksaber training. I mean, just do a montage like everyone else, man. Montage man. I mean, I don't know. I feel bad that we missed that. But still, this whole thing, and I think they're going to continue with this, and I like that, makes me excited. It gives more depth to the master-Padawan or apprentice relationship, and I think that's really cool. So as we start to let's put together a team, right? Let's take a moment to appreciate Ahsoka's awesome ship, a T6 Jedi shuttle. It doesn't look very sexy flying around, but the inside is faboo. Oh, wow, from the bunks. Those are very small bunks, though, with absolutely no privacy. But Sabine is a graffiti artist, by the way, which they didn't do enough with here. I mean, she's usually always graffitiing. But here, she was more admiring past work. But she's a graffiti artist, which is how she recognizes her old bunk. Again, I guess from when she was previously training with Ahsoka. But I also love the main multifunctional room, which has is capable for holo meetings, but also turns into a coffee klatch. Really nice stuff. I think this is a very well-designed ship. I love it. All right, so now let's dive into the characters on the show beyond Ahsoka. Sabine Wren. Sabine Wren found out that she was Force-sensitive when fate brought her... she crossed paths with the Darksaber, which she briefly wielded, by the way. And now, of course, everyone knows what the Darksaber is because of The Mandalorian. Now, Sabine's Mandalorian clan, House Vizsla, is quite powerful in the Mandalorian hierarchy, making her sort of a Mandalorian princess, just like Bo-Katan. And she and Bo-Katan have worked together in the past also. However, Wren is not only a talented graffiti artist, but a talented weapons expert as well. And in fact, went through the Empire's weapons trading program, like the Young Empire internship program, where there she created a very powerful weapon for the Empire, which went and used it on her own Mandalorian people, which is why when we first meet her in Rebels, she's gone into self-imposed exile because she feels she did such a huge betrayal. And she totally did. She's not wrong. Now, eventually on Rebels, that got resolved. To a point, you can never really resolve that. She was responsible for many, many deaths. But clearly Sabine still carries that guilt because being a genius weapons expert brings great responsibility. But now she's also haunted by Ezra sacrificing himself to get rid of Thrawn at the end of Rebels. You know, Sabine painted that mural out of pain, out of missing Ezra. And, Ezra as you kind of see here, Ezra kind of said, Sabine, we have the closest bond. I'm trusting you to find me. And she didn't really seem to do anything about it except just kind of camp out in Lothal, I guess, and continue his work. I don't see her looking for him. But that's kind of how things were left at the end of Rebels. There was also, speaking of their history on Rebels, always a little flirtation between the two of them. At least I thought that Ezra seemed to really like Sabine. So I don't know why he said that she was like a sister to him. I was like, whoa, Ezra, why are you harshing your own mellow here, man? What's going on? He's like, he's blocking himself. It's bizarre. Anyway, Bordeaux her look here is absolutely fantastic. Although her chipped manicure is driving me absolutely crazy. I'm like, At first I thought it was just an interesting manicure. I was trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I was like, no, it's just not at all maintained. But anyway, when she cuts her hair, which, by the way, is exactly like how Kanan cuts his hair in Rebels. I'm like, I still can't figure out why they had them both cut it the same way. Because nobody saw Kanan cut. I guess, did she come across his setup afterwards? But he did that by himself. So I guess maybe this is just like how everyone gives themselves super serious haircuts in Star Wars. But that was a really interesting choice, which, again, you would never know if you hadn't seen Rebels. But I was like, ooh, anyone who saw Rebels would be like, ooh. But I felt bad that she lost the orange tips on her hair because it looked so beautiful in the sunlight. She lost all color gradation to her hair, which she's always had. I was like, after she cuts her hair, can she fix the color again? Because, she's an artist. But I guess she's lost the will to create because of Ezra. But with her Mandalorian armor back on at the very end of episode 2, she does look very much like her character from the show. No jetpack, though. She always has rocked a jetpack. I'm disappointed in that. And also, I missed the checkerboard pattern. That was such a cool part of her original look. And there's no reason she can't have a checkerboard pattern here. I'm like, bring back the checkerboard. She did once like a TIE fighter with checkerboard stuff. It was amazing. The live action costume just looks less cool than her animated one. And I don't see why they couldn't exactly duplicate it. I find that a little frustrating. All right, so yeah, as a weapons expert, Sabine is quite clever and able to unlock the star map. She's very good at tech and figuring it out and stuff like that. And I thought they did that sequence pretty well. I believed it. Thank goodness Ahsoka digitally mapped the temple before it was destroyed. None of these puzzles, by the way, though, are as clever or as complex as any of the ones on Rebels. And these all seem pretty easy to me, which makes it even more frustrating that they take so long to solve them. I'm like, I can see the solve, just do it. Unlocking the Jedi Temple in Season 4 of Rebels was a much cooler sequence. I thought they were going to do that with the temple in the beginning of Episode 1. I was like, oh, are these figures going to move too? And they didn't. I did like that the evil droid was smart enough to smash up all of Sabine's equipment so she wouldn't have a record of what she uncovered. Human henchmen are not as smart. I was like, give that droid henchman a raise. Or whatever a droid wants. Although I thought maybe the Loth-Cat saw the star map come alive, so when Ahsoka went back, I thought that she would be able to see the star map through the Loth-Cat's eyes using the Force. But I guess she's no Ezra. Ezra, I think, would have totally done that. I'd be like, you were there, weren't you, Loth-Cat? Let me see it through your eyes. Oh. By the way, Sabine was living in Ezra's old hideout on Lothal, and so that old communications tower, the highway leading to it, that look of the city, all right out of Rebels. Next, Hera Syndulla. Where the heck is your son? Did they also figure out that was a bad idea? Because at the end of Rebels, after Kanan's tragic, heartbreaking death, which none of us will ever get over, and Freddie Prinze Jr. said he's not coming back. I hope he's just Andrew Garfielding us because I want him to come back. Come back as a Force ghost. You know, as long as Ahsoka's going to run around in the past saving people, go pull Kanan. That's what I would like her to do. Pull Kanan out of that explosion at the last minute. Oh, that would make me so happy. Go get Kanan. That's what she needs to do. Sorry, Anakin. Who would you rather have back if you could only have one? I mean, if she wants to go grab both of them, I'm not going to complain. But if you were running around in the Jedi Temple or whatever, and you could only bring back one Jedi and save them from a point in time right before their death, would it be Anakin or would it be Kanan? It would, for me, 1,000,000,000,000% be Kanan. Because boy, if you have not seen Kanan fight, you are missing out. And it's Freddie Prinze Jr. of all people. I still can't get over that was him. He did a great job. All right, and he could use the gig. So anyway, after his death, it was revealed that he had apparently had one amazing night with Hera at least, and that she had a son with him. So I guess the New Republic has amazing daycare, because where is this kid? And it's been a couple of years. So I think he was pretty big when we actually last saw him. So he should be walking around, quite frankly. Anyway, I never got the feeling, even on Rebels, that Syndulla had any real power in the rebellion. Largely because I never saw her controlling everybody. She never was ordering anyone around or giving, she never had a squad. She almost more seemed like a point person to the rebellion, like the contact person for the Rebels team to interact with the rebellion, right? And that's how it feels when this show first starts out. Again, no one's following orders from her. She's just there by herself being like, oh yeah, don't worry, I can make people do stuff. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to take your word for it and your track record. So also, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, by the way, has a totally different vibe than the animated version of the character, which also at first threw me off. But in Episode 2, she started to be a little bit more like Hera. Like, for instance, her giving motherly advice and guidance to both Ahsoka and Sabine separately. Classic Hera, if you watch Rebels. You're like, I see Hera. And then also, when she was at the manufacturing facility and she starts to throw her weight around as a general a little bit, she's like, you want to bet I can't declassify that? I was feeling it. I was like, that's awesome. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead did that better than Hera ever did on the animated series. I was like, I'm seeing the general. But again, why would a general go to such a situation without any troops with her? Why doesn't she even have a small battalion to go with her? I mean, it makes no sense. But then when she takes to the sky, Hera is known for being an ace pilot. That's her claim to fame. And she had Chopper in tow with her. Then things really started to groove, particularly for these two characters. This, again, was classic Hera and Chopper. Chopper is another great droid. In my opinion, better than R2-D2. He's third, because he doesn't talk. He kind of talks, but to me it goes K2SO, Huyang, and Chopper. Then Chopper. Those are my favorite droids. But I do love Chopper's bad attitude. The way he's always throwing his arms around, throwing them up in the air, and being great. He's so good. And he still has his bad attitude in spades. He's still throwing his arms around when he bangs on the ship. I love it. Who would have guessed that arms would do so much to bring a R2-D2 style droid to life? These are hard words to say in close succession, but I loved it. They got Chopper right, which was really fantastic to see. So back to that manufacturing facility, I do like, as we saw in Mandalorian Season 3, exploring the idea that the Empire was so big and had so many people working for it that you can't get rid of it entirely. So can you really get rid of it at all? It's really just kind of lying in wait, like in waves for what the general, these ideologies are fighting to sway the general public. Just like real life, independent voters in the middle are the ones that really decide elections. You're always going to have your diehards on both sides. So that to me is very interesting to explore that in the world of Star Wars. Again, some people might not want politics in their Star Wars, but I find it very interesting. Now, of course, we all found it very frustrating with the latest Star Wars movies that the Empire was replaced by the First Order, which was pretty much the exact same thing. Because that's not how it works according to history. Like old foes do rise to power again. For instance, look at how the Nixon administration came back secretly under George W. Bush, right? But they looked different. They operated different. And that's why they were able to do it. Because they kind of like snuck in. It was like a Trojan horse kind of operation. But I don't see no Trojan horse here. The Empire's just waltzing right back in. So I don't know. But the New Republic is so stupid and letting it happen and so poorly run themselves that I guess they didn't need to have a Trojan horse. Everybody just ran back to the old idea because they don't like the way things are being run by the new government, which I guess that is a little bit out of history. But the New Republic is just so dumb. I can't believe it. Like, how can a manufacturing facility that large be churning out so many assassin droids and making a hyperjump engine of that size without anyone noticing? Like, does everyone at that facility, they didn't say everyone at that facility was turned. They said probably just enough people to be able to do some secret stuff. But like no one called the tip line to the New Republic. Also, aren't there regular inspections? Aren't there supposed to be at least annual inspections? Although if you're employing so many former Empire people, wouldn't you be doing monthly inspections? The Empire sure did. They looked like they were doing weekly inspections in the Empire. The Empire were no geniuses, but they weren't this level dumb. Is the New Republic so disdainful of the Empire, being like, we're not going to be like the Empire, and so naive that they didn't even bother to create their own intelligence bureau? It's absolutely ridiculous. But it's also infuriating because I guess you do kind of see it happening in history. So it's just as annoying to see it happening in a fictional show. And I kind of think it's cool, though, too, because I love that holding a mirror up to stuff that we're experiencing now. All right, so as for the rest of the 2 episodes, I don't have too much to say about Morgan Elsbeth right now, although I do like her dress, which actually it's revealed are pants. I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. I like that. Costume-wise, though, I think some of them are a bit overly bulky. Like, they didn't choose the right fabric, and so they don't look as good as they should. Like, Baylan and Hattie's cloaks, so unwieldy. I'm like, how much fabric do you guys have on there? Those must be so heavy. There was one weird moment also during the Hattie Wren fight, where for some reason Hattie, did a dance move where she moved her cloak over Sabine's head, and I'm like, are we dancing or fighting here? I guess a little bit of both. And then also, I was disappointed in Ezra's jacket. I was like, that is so bulky. It looks so bad. Why would you make it out of that material? Why wouldn't you make it out of Lycra? Or whatever Hera's pants are made out of. I was like, those are some nice pants. I liked this guy as the Lothal police pilot. He really popped on screen. And he's just trying to do his job, Sabine. I felt bad for him. These medical droids, right out of Rebels as well. And I liked when Huyang asked Sabine if she was done with repairs. I was like, oh, droid humor, or just droid perspective. The potentially exploding helmet bit was funny, like when Huyang said to Hera, of course you're okay with trying this out. You're a hologram, so the explosion wouldn't affect her. I thought that was funny. But then I thought the information that they got out of the droid was really underwhelming. I was like, it should have been a bigger get for what we went through. Also, as for this space show, on the island, and then also all of Morgan Elsbeth's areas, like the hyperdrive jump she's building or whatever, they aren't well defined enough that I don't really know what's going on or where we're going, right? Like, where does the map lead? 2 episodes out of 6, right? Is it 6? But I think actually it might be a little bit more. But anyway, how do I not have a more clear idea of where we're going at this point? Episode 2 should have ended with a name for where we're going. But did they? I didn't catch it. Again, it should be real clear. I want a PowerPoint presentation, Morgan. When she had her underlings lined up there, I'd be like, okay, when's the presentation start? So that's my breakdown of Ahsoka episodes 1 and 2. What do you think, as a Rebels fan or as someone who's never seen Rebels? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.